Too late. We're going to start with the top. This is getting data off the server into React, and I am Jack Thorne. This is me. I'm a software engineer here at Thoughtful. I go by one true free on the internet. Very sorry, I picked the name a long time ago, and it has stuck. If you try to find me on GitHub, Twitter, Instagram, all kind of stuff, that's my name. I've done a lot of Ruby, Crystal, I've done some Java. I'm also sorry. I think everyone has to do it once. And then React, Python, and Go. That's a lot of tooling that we use here now, and that's what we're going to talk about. But before that, you're going to find my dog on the internet. If you look at More True Free, there's definitely going to be photos of Kona. And I also play a fair bit of pool, so if you find me on the internet, there's probably shots of that. I've been trying to convince Thoughtful to do a pool table. It's not happened yet. Crossing my fingers. Maybe there'll be one here next time you guys come. But let's talk about data. So why is data interesting? Makes the whole internet go round. Data fuels the internet. And there's a lot of different web apps that basically take data, they transform it, they render it to us, we take a look at it, you might type something in return, that's data, it transforms it, sends it other places. Basically, it's all data all the way up and down. So it's interesting to know what formats you can do it in, what things you can grab from different APIs, from different things that people didn't even intend for you to grab. What do you have access to in the web to build apps? Google Data Suite is a super fun place to take a look at some interesting, data sets, get some ideas, stuff like that. It's really hard to use. It's a Google tool. So I recommend Data Explorer. It's a much better tool. You can sign up for a weekly email, and it will send you things, and you kind of browse, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You're like, nothing really interesting this week, and just pass on. But these are some interesting ideas that it has within the past month or two. You can look at technology adoption by country, or all the characters and actors in Saturday Night Live. So, fascinating big book. I want to talk about different format popularities. This might sound boring, I promise it's not. You'll see that there are some different formats that I have at the top. I think we can all guess the top one. That's JSON. This will build a lot of our APIs today. It's going to be in most of the vendors that we integrate with. The bottom one, GraphQL. So this is not a survey of APIs that are out there. This is Google Trends. So it's a wide spectrum. But just keep that in mind. At the top, we get JSON. At the bottom, we have GraphQL. And then there's a lot of data sources in the middle. This is like the overlooked stuff. This is the stuff that you can build in your app that's super fun that not a lot of people kind of adopt. So big one, top one, the one we start with, JSON. Web native stands for JavaScript object notation. It's going to be everywhere. We mostly use the same conventions. I realize you can use it in some weird ways, but conventionally, very simple. We all understand the syntax. And it's used basically everywhere. And it's going to be really easy to use with React because React's built in JavaScript and JavaScript's in the name of JSON. XML, it's scary. It's usually in older applications, legacy applications. The previous job that I worked at, they were building new applications. So they're designing new applications that their only interface was XML. So it's still being used. You're still going to see it in a while. See new stuff, you'll see old stuff. It's way more formal. It's very complicated. It has a ton of features. Whenever I talk about XML with someone who understands XML, I get a little scared. Like, am I going to use this term wrong? It's a property or an attribute. Like, I think about it. It has XML schema. It has XPath, things that we understand in the browser, right? Used in different ways, but just understand that it's a lot more complicated, but it's very, very powerful, and people who love it really love it. GraphQL, a new kid on the block, designed by Facebook. There's a ton that I'm not going to go into in this talk about GraphQL. If you want to learn about GraphQL, go watch a GraphQL talk. But we're going to talk about the data aspect of it. The data aspect is it's just JSON. It definitely has a lot more to it than just the data serialization layer. There's a transport layer, there's a data protocol, it's based on schema. I think the really cool part when we come about or talk about putting in React is that its returns are predictable. It's very deterministic response. Tell what we want, get what we want, if not, get an error. And that's very, very nice. The API cannot change out from underneath us. CSV. This is my dark horse. I think that this is super underused on the internet. There are a lot of CSV endpoints out there. Anyone who's written a report for someone who has to read in Excel and they put it on the internet, most likely it's a CSV. And if you don't want to ask a dev team to try to make a JSON endpoint for you at their sprint, prioritize it, and get them to build it for you and maintain it for you, you might just be able to read the reporting endpoint. Very nice. It's pretty simple to use. A lot of libraries actually have built-in CSV like inputs into them. D3 comes with it. It's my favorite one. Just like point to a CSV endpoint, you can pull out, someone's like metrics report or whatever, and you can just use it. There's tons of these out there. We're going to cover this one a little bit. Oh, and I've used it before. I've used it many times. I think it's, underrated. Okay, you want to follow along at home? You can run mine. I'm going to put all this stuff on one true free. Sorry again. React Chicago data. So if you're trying to write down code, evolve things exactly, don't worry about it. It's going to be, it's going to be published. So don't get too caught up on the little details there. This is actually working code, but it's extracted. So I want to give you the concepts. I don't want to give you the complete code. So the idea is the most important part. I will not be showing in each slide the constructor, the renderer, and the did not component. I'm just going to be showing you the part that I think is relevant. So if you're wondering why, that's why. I'm trying to make this the most basic, streamlined kind of way to view the code. So we're starting with just bare bones basic app. Same thing you get off the React site. We just had to talk about hooks, and I'm going to do the thing that I was told not to do, which is I'm going to use component did mount. Why am I using component did mount instead of any of the other hooks that might be better right now for consuming data? Because the README told me to. And we're going to use the most basic tooling available in the browser. That's fetch. Well, maybe not the most basic, but it's built into the browser. In these examples, I'm not going to use other options like the method. I'm not going to set the headers. I'm not going to do all that kind of stuff. Why? Because it's hard to read on the screen. But you should probably do it with production apps because it's more explicit. It's easier to see what's going on. I'm also going to not include this little right here. It's not going to be in a lot of code examples. Is loaded. That's very nice for using APIs in the render loop. To be able to render is loading when data is not in the browser yet. Another one that's not included in these examples is if there's error. Not doing error management. Inside your apps, is loading and is broken are two different things. You should probably let your users know. This is what a render loop looks like. You will not see this in most examples. Hoisting all of the variable declarations to the top. Pretty good pattern. Is loading just for the first render cycle. And then you should probably include is error. I'm not. But this is what a render loop looks like if you have something on the back end and you're consuming data from it. Yeah, there's other bullet points here. They're all pretty valid. If take a look at the slides, you should read them. All right, get ready for a lot of data. This is what JSON looks like. Top is what it looks like when you fetch it. That's the component did mount. The bottom is what it looks like when you render it. This is super nice because fetch actually has the .json call. So all the things where we're going to take a string and parse it, all kind of stuff, it just works. We just call .json. Another nice thing is just stream parsing. So if you're consuming large APIs, it's very nice. We do not get this in other examples, but this just works and it's pretty cool. You can also use JSON to parse. I do not believe that is that uses streams. It might. I don't think so. And what you get out of it is basically objects you would use natively. You're going to see on line 8 that it's just like job.id, job.state, all that kind of stuff. And it's really, really easy to use. Basically, JSON and JavaScript are just married. It all just kind of works. It will, if you chain things together with documentation and you have an undefined in there, either your API changed because someone got a better design idea or something broke, your code will break. So just be warned. But yeah, you can use documentation. Super nice. XML. This gets pretty ugly pretty quick. If someone knows a better way to do this, I'd love to hear. This is the way that I've done in the past. You basically get a parser, you have to parse it, and then after that, it gets really gnarly. You have to use magic strings and magic numbers, which are just basically static strings and numbers that you have to include inside your function calls. When I do this in production apps, I mostly break this into 3 stages. Getting the data, sanitizing the data, using the data. In a short example where I only have 15 lines to show it all, we're not going to get into all that. But you can see the difference between JSON and this. You have to give things by these function calls, and there's strings in there, and there's numbers in there. I wouldn't worry too much about what each one of those are. If you want to, you can go find online. Just realize that XML, a lot harder, a lot more complicated, but 100% possible. And I strongly believe if you break this into 3 stages, very, very doable. GraphQL, JSON's cousin. Yeah, a little more setup here. Like I said, it's it's a little bit more than just a data protocol. It's got some other stuff going on. I didn't put the query in here. Query will be online, but basically we have to like generate a query for what we want. We have to pass variables. We have to send it a post instead of a get. When we get it back, we're using JSON. We have to grab everything from a specific thing called data. Why? Because that's part of the protocol. I am not doing error handling here, but just as a gotcha, you can't just use HTTP error codes. You also have to check that error hash. And you have to handle all of those errors. So it's harder to handle the errors than you normally get in just regular JSON endpoint. What do you get for it? Predictability, deterministic responses. You can get a schema with it. All that other kind of stuff that comes with GraphQL. So a little bit more work, but if the benefits are worth it, it's pretty nice. Also, you can do things that you have to. There's a lot of like interesting querying magic you can do with this. Come ask me later. I'll tell some stories. In the render, it's just like the JSON rendering. You get .map for things that are arrays or collections. You get .name, all that other kind of stuff. It just all kind of works out of the box. It magically integrates with JavaScript, and it's really easy to use. So, the line right here, that .json in the component div mount does all the magic for you. All right, CSV, the dark horse, the one that I think people radically underuse. This one's a little different. Notice in line 2 in the component div mount, we use .text instead of .json. And then after that, we just chop it by new line and chop it by comma. Those of you who have had to munge a lot of CSV will know that that does not cover all the there are all edge cases. There are CSVs in which this code will not work. But I have deployed this code to production, and I have gotten 99.9% success on CSV parsings. I would say know your data. If you know that your data is A through Z and just numbers, and there's no crazy characters, this will work. And you don't have to include any kind of crazy libraries. This is all just raw JavaScript. If you need the client libraries, they're out there. If they handle your edge cases, you should know if they do or if they don't. But you can just do these 2 lines of code to consume any CSV or report, well, not any reporting, but any reporting endpoint that is CSV. After that, you'll notice you don't get all the nice little like strings or whatever the headers are, because I didn't do that. Pretty sure you could figure out a way to do that, maybe one more line of code, but I didn't. So I just access them by indices. I got 0 and 3 there. One of them is ID, one of them is confidence interval. You can you want to make headers and kind of name everything you can, but this is a pretty simple way to do that. So data out. We talked a little bit about why data is interesting in the internet. Hopefully that's an easy sell. I don't really know. Talked about what kind of some popular, some underrated, and some lowly rated data sources are, what the life cycle is to consume an endpoint, and then render it. And then we talked about a few examples of walking through like what data sources, what they would look like to go through that cycle. Why they're interesting. Any questions? Did I wake you up enough? Does Sebastian need to tell another joke? No? All right, cool.